Welcome to the DSPN.
He's given him. Well, there you go. He was forward.
Oh, a punch up now in midfield. Fraser's involved.
The Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the podcast, people. Martin, Devlin and Lachlan wore the DSPN. A little bit of housekeeping, as always. Again, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, please. If you're following us on social media at all, Martin Devlin _DSPN. Like, share, follow, subscribe, leave us a comment. Love you for all of that. We're trying to get to 5,000 YouTube subscribers as quick as possible. Well, what a treat today. Special guests include Tohu Harris. I've really been looking forward to this. A good long catch-up with the former Warriors skipper forced into early retirement. We've got him for, he said, as long as you want, ask him whatever. Matt Gunn, LBP, let's be positive with TMG. Twisel's Matt Gunn, ranting and raving about all things sport. Kung Wong at FB Garbage Time. He's our Super Bowl expert, reviewing yesterday's win by the Eagles. We've got a tied five talking Sam Kerr. Verdict expected overnight. Black Caps in good form ahead of the Champs Trophy. Justin Marshall yesterday reckons his Crusaders are going to win the Super Rugby opener. Live Golf and the PGA is so close to being back in bed together. And we remember the biggest boxing upset of all time, amongst other topics that we'll talk about today. We begin the show the same way every day.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Thank you, Will Jordan. Will Jordan is right. New Zealand players should be allowed to play for any of the Super Rugby sides and still be eligible for the All Blacks. And no, he's not the first to suggest this idea, but good on him for being one of the very first high-profile players to go public on it. I think in terms of guys playing in Japan, the UK, Europe, New Zealand Rugby's position is probably something that most people agree with. But being ruled out of the All Blacks because you're playing for New South Wales, Queensland or the Brumbies against the Blues, Hurricanes or Chiefs, well, it just doesn't make sense. In fact, it's nonsense. The New Zealand sides play these teams every other week, which means Coach Razor can see any player playing for those sides up front, in person, competing at the highest level, testing themselves against our best. How is that not good for everyone involved? It'd create opportunities for guys who might not get a spot here. It'd put them in different circumstances and scenarios. Maybe freshen up one or two players who are stale from years of the same. And it's the same standard because it's the same comp, duh. This idea is a win-win because New Zealand Rugby can rubber stamp this and still keep their control freak hold on almost all of the New Zealand players. It'd only involve half a dozen blokes at best anyway, so come on NZR. This is where the national body is so frustrating. How long is this going to take? It is one of the easiest decisions they'll ever have to make.
DSPN.
Warriors skipper Tohu Harris retired a couple of weeks ago, as well you know, and we're very privileged to be able to get him face-to-face for a good long chat about the career, about the prospects of the season, but more importantly about where he is at the moment. Tohu, thanks so much for joining us, mate.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So, a couple of weeks after it was announced, how do you feel right now? Have you accepted what has happened?
Yeah, I've accepted it. It's been some time now, and the club have been awesome throughout this whole process, and managed to be able to spend a bit more time with my family, which is, this time of the year is pretty foreign with the season coming up. But so it's a little bit different, a little bit strange, but it's been in that aspect, it's been really nice. So it's come to terms with it, and just got to look ahead to what's in front now.
I'll ask you about that, about your future in a few questions' time. When I spoke to you last year, though, and you told us about how, your wrist was so bad you were having trouble opening doors and that at home. So it's really concerning. How are these injuries going to be in the next few years for you? Are you going to, get your body back and actually recover, or what?
Yeah, well, the rest of my body's feeling great and was throughout pre-season. It's just comes down to this wrist, and from all the information that the surgeon has given and the medical professionals, I don't think it's going to change very much. I've just got to learn to live with it, and because there's no cartilage in my wrist anymore, it's just something that I've got to deal with for the rest of my life. I guess the risk of me playing was making it even worse than it is. So, I think they had the rest of my life in mind when when the doc made the decision, and it's just something that I've just got to adjust to and work around, I guess.
How much of a shock is it, and how different is it going to be for you? I've got a number of questions with this question. How your life was planned. You were going to play for another year and things. So does it have to kind of be a complete reset and rethink, or is it a lot easier than that?
No, yeah, there's certainly some adjustment. Like my own personal goals was hoping to play longer than next year, but obviously. Was contracted for. I only contracted for next year, but yeah, I was planning on having a good couple of seasons and hopefully to continue my career. So, there's a lot of adjusting that needs to happen. But the club, the support of the club, the RLPA, like everyone involved, they sort of wrap around you and they're allowing me to have this time with my family to sort of let it all sink in and I guess make the adjustments slowly.
Have you had any thoughts already about what you might like to do, as opposed to, we don't know, and you probably don't know what you will do, but what you might like to do in terms of staying involved with the game? And there's plenty of options. There's the admin side of it, there's the coaching side of it, there's the talking about it side of it, which you've always been good at as well.
To be honest, there hasn't been a whole lot of thinking ahead. I'm still contracted to the club this year, so I still have my obligations and contract to fulfill. So, the club's been very kind in allowing me to have time with family and things like that. But there will still be, I guess, obligations I need to fulfill this year with the Warriors. So, so in the near future, I guess that's what's ahead of me, and just working out and waiting to hear how that all looks at the moment.
Are you worried at all about retirement? Because you're a young man. You're only in your 30s.
Well, I don't know. I obviously wasn't planning on this to happen this quickly, but it's something that sort of I can't spend too much time worrying. I've just got to, I guess, make the most of the time that I've got with my family while I've got it, and then I guess work with the club, and then things will happen naturally, whether that's with the club or if they've got different plans for me. I'm not too sure, but it's not too worrying at the moment.
Okay. You don't have any regrets? You haven't had any of those kind of feelings at all? Because I can only imagine that, there just must be just a flood of emotions that happen, but maybe they also happen over time. Yeah,
well, the regret thing is because this wasn't my decision, I guess. So it's hard to regret something that I guess that got taken out of my hands. So that's a bit of a strange feeling. That is it wasn't my decision. So I don't know if a regret comes into it, but
sure.
In terms of not being able to achieve what I wanted to achieve at the Warriors, that not having that opportunity moving forward, I guess that part is, there's a little bit of regret there, because wanting to win the competition with the Warriors, excited for who's coming in, and the guys that are the young guys who are gaining experience at the club, like not being able to play alongside them is I guess a regret there. But again, that sort of decision had been taken out of my hands, and it's something I've just got to adjust to and get on with.
How do you look back at your career, or is it too early to even ask you about this? Obviously, you've got to highlight, you've won a premiership, you've got such a great reputation. People loved watching you play, outstanding player. Have you thought much about how maybe you'd like to be remembered as a player?
No, I haven't thought too much about how I'd like to be remembered. That's
That sounds a bit morbid. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound morbid.
Yeah.
I just mean,
Yeah,
you've just
still
got,
like.
yeah, of course, but you just held it, as I say, in such high regard, and people absolutely loved you as a player.
Again, like I haven't thought too much about that. The thing that I've been able to reflect on, like I've been extremely fortunate to experience some cool things throughout my career, and played in some big games, being able to win the competition, all that sort of stuff. The experiences are real special, and being able to run out on the field with my son like that's something that is really close to my heart. But I think the thing that I'll remember most is the relationships built at both clubs, and I think those are the memories that will stick a lot. Just those interactions and those different experiences in and around footy.
Did you reach the heights that you wanted to as a player? Can you sit there and say to yourself, yeah, man, I got to where I wanted to go?
And in some respects, yeah, I didn't set too many personal goals. Like my goals were centered around where what I wanted to achieve with the teams that I played in, and I managed to achieve that with the Melbourne Storm, being a part of a great side there, and got piggyback from a few future immortals, and wasn't able to achieve that, achieve what I wanted with the Warriors. Winning the competition is the ultimate goal, and to be able to be a part of the first team in Warriors history to do that was a huge goal of mine. But again, now when it does happen, and I'm certain it will, I'll have a different role. I'll be there watching and cheering them on.
The most satisfying times that you've had at the Warriors, is it just easy to say, hey, it was 2 years ago when we won 16 games and got into the top 4? But I'm sure that, with what, your own personal experiences, the fact that, you see and experience so much more than we do. You've already mentioned the young players and the players that you've played with. If you had to kind of pick, a couple of bits of pizza out of that whole pie, what would it be, the most satisfying things about being at the Warriors?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like, I don't know if, satisfying is a hard one to sort of answer, but like there has been some special moments here at the club. There's been some tough times, but like the homecoming game, that was something that was incredible. Just seeing how, I don't know, how much the Warriors mean to the people of New Zealand. Like it was crazy. I played in some games at Mount Smart Stadium, and there was more seats than people. So we've gone through some tough times.
Oh yeah.
But I think through the hardest time, through that COVID period, I think, and not being able to play at home for over 1,000 days, I think it showed how, when we came back, how much, I guess, the Warriors were missed, and how much the Warriors missed our fans. Like, because the support has been through the roof ever since we returned. Whether we're winning games or losing them, they've been showing up each and every week, and that's been incredible to be a part of and incredible to see.
I love hearing that, because sport is emotion, and anyone who doesn't think it's emotional, I mean, I don't know what planet you live on. It's pure emotion, isn't it? And the buzz you must get when you run out last year, every home game sold out, as opposed to, as you say, with empty stadiums and foul weather nights and things like that. So how much does it actually lift you as a person and a player? And what does it feel like when you're running out there and you've got that thing rocking and all of those people are there for you?
Yeah, it's funny, like a lot of times when you're playing footy, everything is drowned out, so you don't sort of recognise it. You're sort of in the moment, and you can hear the person next to you, all that sort of stuff. But there are so many times over the last couple of years that whether we're defending on the line or someone had a big run or whatever it was, the crowd sort of broke through that that sort of, I don't know what you call it, the
cocoon or a bubble that you're in or something.
Yeah, you almost are in a bubble because you're focused on what's in front of you. But so many times the crowd broke through that just from the noise, and you can actually feel the noise when you're out there, and it does it does give you a lift when you hear that sort of stuff. And the ones that I really enjoyed was the games that we played in Sydney or the Gold Coast, and our supporters were outnumbered, but they were by
Making
far
more
the
noise.
loudest.
Yeah. You can hear it through the TV. It's fantastic,
and,
mate. Yeah.
Yeah, Warriors chants like that. Like it was crazy to experience that, and like it does make you feel good. It gives you a little bit of energy, and because sometimes when you're playing away, it's hard. You're away from your family, and just having that little bit extra, it really helps.
There you go, fans. So if you're watching this or listening to it, make as much noise as possible because it does actually work. And if you are watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, please. It really does help us. I just want to just briefly touch on that COVID period because I did speak to you during an interview there when I was working at News Talk ZB, and you were really honest about it, about how hard it was. It was lonely. It was just a really difficult time. And when you put it in that perspective, Tohu, where you're talking about 1,000 days, man, that's a hell of a long time. What did it, take out of you? I suppose part of it is that it brings the group together, but you're missing out on so much as well. Is it a time you look back at now fondly, or how do you look at it?
It was obviously a tough time, but there's parts that were extremely hard, and there were parts that when we look back on it, a couple of years removed from it, we can sort of look at it like this now. But there are parts of it that that were some pretty cool moments. Like we got to stay in some pretty cool locations, like Star of the Sea in Terrigal, right on the beachfront in Surfers Paradise. Like we got looked after a lot throughout. We stayed in some special places, but again, that was mixed in amongst some pretty tough times and time away with families. But yeah, eventually we all got our families and we were together, and those are the times where you can sort of take stock of where we're actually staying, where we're living, and the special places of the world that we were.
Is it fun? And how much fun is it? Playing rugby league for a living, playing for these clubs, playing for Melbourne, coming home, playing here in New Zealand for the Warriors. Is fun a word that you attach to it, or does it just become business and fun happens when you kind of stop later and think about it? It is a job, and there's times where it's hard and you've got to approach it like a job. But the best points in your career, you often find that you're playing at your best when you are having fun. Like 2023, that season, along with 2018, my first year in the Warriors season, those were probably two seasons where I felt like I had the most fun in my career, and that's sort of circumstances brought along, I guess, with my age. Like Melbourne Storm, we achieved some special things and played in some big games and stuff. But as a young player, I think I didn't allow myself to have as much fun because obviously who I was playing alongside of and the pressure I put on myself to perform. I felt like there was a lot more pressure on that I placed on myself, and it sort of took away from the fun side, whereas I probably played some of the best footy in my career in 2018 and 2023 because I sort of was a lot more relaxed, had fun with the people around me, and we just played free-flowing footy, which we sort of haven't done since we were kids. So that's what made the game fun, and that's why I enjoyed those years so much. Couple of quick questions. We'll let you go, and I thank you so much for your time. Good, I could sit here and talk to you for an hour, but I know that you're really much for time. Just physically, just explain to us on this side of the microphone, us fans, and how physically tough and demanding is it to play in that league right now, and compare that to when you first started. Has it gradually gone up? Is it harder today than it ever was, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's been gradual either. It's every year it gets the game. They change rules to make the game faster and harder, and so the importance of things like recovery and training to, I guess, prepare your body for what it goes through on game day, becomes even more important. The game was a lot slower when I first started, which probably helped a bit to learn the game, and I guess the importance of wrestle was higher, or you were able to do more on the ground. But yeah, like I said, every year they seem to change a few more rules, and the game's just gotten so much faster, but the physicality of it is still there. So it's the game's probably the hardest it's ever been to play, and that's why it takes some special efforts to win this competition or to be successful week in, week out.
Do you follow or look at a lot of social media? Are you into that at all, or not?
No, I don't have social media. I haven't had it for
great, because some
long
players
time.
do. Some players love it. I've searched for you, just don't seem to be. It's not your gig.
No, I haven't had it for maybe 10 years or so, or maybe not 10 years, but for a long, long time. And so I don't know anything about what's going on.
Was there a reason for that? Was it kind of a deliberate choice?
Yeah, deliberate choice. I just can't be bothered with it. It doesn't. It's I've just never been interested. So, the only reason I had it at different times throughout my career was like sponsorship stuff. So contractually, but as soon as I sort of got rid of those, I got rid of the social media.
I want to thank you so much for your time. I've always loved talking to you. Love you as a player as well, mate. And I hope that over the next few years we get to see a hell of a lot of you. It's a bummer that it won't be on the field, but you've had a brilliant career. And I hope when you sit back and reflect on that you actually appreciate that too. And also that, you've given a lot of people a lot of joy and everything. So good health and go well. And it'll be good to see you back with the Warriors in some role somewhere, someday.
Thanks, Marty. Appreciate it.
Super Bowl Sunday in the US of A, Super Bowl Monday here. And I think we're all probably still reeling at just the emphatic nature of that Eagles victory. Our man for the last couple of years, he's been absolutely brilliant. At FB Garbage Time, you can see the logo there at the back. Support this man's podcast, people. HK Wong joins us. Thank you so much, brother. What has been the reaction in the last 24 hours? Are people stunned at the nature of that victory?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a huge amount of shock that's gone around, but I think that for you and I and the non-casual NFL football fan, this is not as shocking as it is to the general public. And that's because we've been talking about all along, even the last time they were on here, and even back at the beginning of the season, when they're about halfway through the regular season, that the Chiefs are not the Chiefs of old, right? They've been underperforming in terms of offense throughout the entire season. This is by far the worst statistical season for Patrick Mahomes in terms of yards per game, passing, and in terms of passing efficiency. They've actually not found a secret weapon anywhere along the line, and Travis Kelce has had a massive downturn through most of the season. They've been relying a lot on their defense, not on their offense. And that's different than what we've seen, from the Chiefs that were so dominant last season and the season before. So, in many ways, this is still shocking to the general public. I think most people have moved on, honestly, because it was probably one of the least popular Super Bowls in terms of the teams in it. It still had a good amount of viewership, but I can tell you that when I was looking at this coming up on the Super Bowl itself, there were tickets left to enter the Super Bowl 30 minutes prior to getting there. So that means something, right? I mean, the average cost was somewhere around $7,000 a ticket, but at about the 30-minute mark, you could get in for about $1,800 to $1,900.
Wow.
So that means something, right? Because most of these Super Bowls, they're sold out many, many hours, if not almost a full day in advance, even on the secondary market. So the fact that there are tickets still available means that people overestimated what the value was, and people are just getting a little bit tired of seeing the Chiefs there, and maybe a little bit tired of seeing the Eagles there as well. So,
well, so in terms of Patrick Mahomes, I mean, good on him for fronting up afterwards and saying, this is on me. I mean, he gave away, picks and 14 points as a result of those, and you can't do that. You can't turn over like that in a Super Bowl. 6 sacks and 2 interceptions and fumbles all on top of that. How much of it came down to him and just a really poor performance individually?
Well, I think that a lot of it does, but I think that I give them a little bit of credit. The offensive line was a disaster. They did their best impression of a turnstile. Everybody got through, and the fact that the Eagles were able to do that without blitzing once
Yeah.
Not a single blitz.
Amazing.
You know, on all those dropbacks, they basically brought all that pressure, 11 actual quarterback pressures, and 6 sacks. That is the most he's been sacked in a single game in his entire career.
Yeah.
So, you know, kudos to Nick Fangio and what they were able to do there in Philly. I mean, they obviously diagnosed the heck out of it, but they did have, as we mentioned last time, they did have a starter on the offensive line that was new. He'd only had about 3 starts in the NFL, but it's no excuse. You're a professional. You got to step up and you got to protect them. That being said, all right. So that being said, I will not pass by the opportunity to dump on Patrick Mahomes for being bad, because he was bad. I mean, at the end of the first half, he was 6 of 14 for 33 yards and 2 interceptions.
Worst ever, I think, in terms of yards, wasn't it, for his whole?
That's right.
First
That's right. And also the worst ever passer rating for a quarterback in the first half this season. So I mean, he was barely really bad. And I think part of the problem was that he was waiting for long developing routes to develop, and he didn't have time to do that. And his instinct to actually just kind of take off and run was just a half second too slow with the speed that the Eagles had on that front four. So he was targeting guys that just weren't having separation. And case in point, near the end of the second half, that second pick at the end of the second quarter, right before the end of the half, was entirely based on him thinking he was Superman. There was absolutely zero velocity on that pass he threw over into the center of the field, and he got picked. I mean, obviously, magnificent play by the Eagles defense, both that and the previous pick by Cooper DeJean, which he picked 6th all the way back. But, you know, I think Mahomes thought he could do more than he could do, and that was a problem. And you can't make those types of mistakes. And he thought he was infallible, and it was clear that was the problem, that he was holding onto the ball. He knew that his offensive line wasn't going to hold. He had to go short and dump off. He should have gotten Kelce more involved. He should have gotten Kareem Hunt more involved. He should have gotten Pacheco more involved. They didn't do that.
HK, so, you know, no one has got the three-peat before, and there's a very good reason for it, because part of it, people, is that when you're going for this, you've got to add in the playoff games, and over 3 or 4 seasons, effectively what happens if you're going for a three-peat is that you've actually played another season. Over 4 seasons, you've played 5 seasons if you get, and these playoff games are, you know, the intensity goes up. What happens now to Kansas City? Are they vulnerable? Is everyone in the, you know, American Football Conference looking at them going, oh, hang on a second, we can figure this out? And the other flip part to that question is in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles, with those young guys they've got in defense, great drafting from them, a quarterback that now has actually got a ring, and that confidence that's going to instill. Where do they go? Do they become the dominant team in the NFC?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I have to see the Eagles actually not being dominant again next year. They're returning almost everybody. There's a couple key free agents they're going to have to deal with, but for the most part, they maintain most of the core of their defense. The Chiefs, on the other hand, they're turning over their entire wide receiver room. Everybody in that wide receiver room is basically a free agent at the end of this season. So they're going to have to turn things around. And I think they're going to have to find some solutions along the offensive line. I don't think the AFC is going to catch up to the Chiefs that quickly, because remember, this is the exact same Chiefs team, essentially, that the Bills played and couldn't beat.
That's
Just 2 weeks ago.
Again.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Exactly. So if you think about it, it's not like the AFC has caught up to the Chiefs. It's just that there are certain defenses that have managed to get, to find the vulnerabilities along the Chief offensive line and make life difficult. Because the entire purpose of this was to drop additional guys into coverage, right? Because you have 11 guys there, you're only rushing 4. If you can get that kind of pressure in the time that it takes for Mahomes to diagnose the defense on the back end, he has to account for an additional guy in coverage. And that is hard for him to do because he's not used to that. He's used to seeing an extra rusher. He's used to seeing linebackers come in. He's used to seeing a cornerback blitz, and he absolutely takes that apart. But what happens when you don't do that? When you can get to him with 4 guys, that's what we saw last night. That's what we saw. And that is now, not every team can do that, right? Not every team has a front 4 as athletic and as dominant as the Philadelphia Eagles do. So let's not just say that any other old team, NFC, AFC, or otherwise, can step in there and do exactly what the Eagles did. That's not reasonable. But it's what's become very clear is that he needs a go-to guy on the other side, and he doesn't have that. I mean, the fact that they've moved down by that many points at the half, 24 points at the half, that is tied for the second largest halftime deficit in Super Bowl history. The next biggest, by the way, you'd be happy to hear, was
yeah.
the Broncos down 25 to your
Redskins,
Redskins
yeah.
back in
Yeah.
right, Super Bowl 22. So, the fact of the matter is that this is something that is going to be systemic for him, but it's not something that every team will be able to game plan around. This is very Eagles specific because of the players they have. Vic Fangio, obviously, his plans can be duplicated, but if you don't have the personnel, you're not going to be able to get it.
The Tide 5.
5 separate sporting topics. Lachlan, roughly a minute or so on each, maybe 90 seconds. And when the bell reminds us, we go on to the next topic in no particular order. We're going to be talking about Justin Marshall saying that the Crusaders will win their opening game against the Hurricanes. Sam Kerr, verdict overnight. Gunny will cover that shortly as well, post-Super Bowl. Well, we'll leave that also majorly to Kung Wong, but we'll just have a little chat about that. The Black Caps win again. What can we read into these 2 one-day wins that we've had in Pakistan prior to the Champions Trophy? Live Golf and the PGA are getting cuddly and cosy, and they may be back in bed together again. And if we get time, well, the CEO of Eden Park wants the Warriors to be playing there. Plus, we've got to reflect on this day in 1990, the biggest boxing upset ever. But we'll kick it with the Super Bowl, quickly. It was a resounding victory for your mob, and you're wearing the shirt today. I got to say congratulations. I got to be gracious about that. 24-0 at halftime, absolute smackdown, and then you'd won it pretty much in the third quarter. I thought defensively outstanding. And those young blokes that you've drafted, whoever was behind all of that has just picked some absolute world-class players in those positions. And this looks like a team that should go on from here and be the best team in the NFC side of it, at least for 2 or 3 or 4 years from here.
Well, the draft side of it is an interesting part of the Eagles' resurgence, because for a long time the GM Howie Roseman was known as a bit of a Bill Belichick at the Patriots, where he wasn't known as good at drafting. And yet one year they just sort of changed their philosophy and drafted great, hard-working defensive players from the SEC, Alabama and Georgia. That's what our defence is built around.
Yeah.
And they're all young, as you say. We've got a couple of free agents in the off-season that's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Well,
One being Zach Bourne.
Saquon also was major, wasn't he? I mean, what a contribution he's made as well.
All season, yes.
And they shut him down yesterday.
Well, they shut him down, and this is, not to toot my trumpet, but I sort of said this is what has to happen. You've got to have, the Eagles opening up a huge lead in the first half that Kansas can't come back from. But also, it's not as much Saquon needs to play well, it's Jalen Hurts needs to look after the ball. He needs to make good decisions in the passing game and not throw the ball away a lot, because he did that particularly against Green Bay in the playoffs. So that is, there's been a number of, I've watched so many Super Bowls. The one that comes to mind when I think of dominance was Seattle over Denver. That first 3.5 quarters, especially when we opened up a 40-6 lead, I've never seen defensively a more dominant showing from a team. They didn't even blitz.
Makes me feel great about being as a Commanders fan, because we were actually in that game scoreline at least till halftime anyway. But congratulations for that. Black Caps won again overnight, and now we play in this Tri-Series final this weekend. Beat South Africa. Kane Williamson got a brilliant century, fastest century ever, I think, in one-day cricket for him. Caveat on this result, only 4 of the South African side that are in their Champions Trophy squad played. So they did what they did when they sent their test team down here. Read into it what you want. This is a warm-up tournament, okay? We play Pakistan in the opener Wednesday week, and none of this is going to count when it comes to the Champions Trophy. In the Champions Trophy, we play all the subcontinent sides. We play Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, all in those conditions. So it's good to actually get games in those conditions. That's the only thing I'm reading into it. That our guys, as opposed to the T20 World Cup last year when we couldn't be asked turning up because we were on holiday, right, and had no warm-up matches. At least we're playing them, so we're getting used to it. That's what I'm very pleased about. If guys can get in form, that's good. Read nothing else into it. Done?
I have nothing to add.
Nothing to add, yeah.
They are trial matches.
They're trial matches.
When your opponent is resting a number of players. Yeah. The tournament hasn't started.
That's exactly
none of it bloody matters.
Counts for Jack. Let's move on to Live Golf and the PGA. So what's happening now is that there has been an exemption made for whoever is on the Live Golf Tour who isn't already exempt to play in the Open, the British Open major. There's one being made now for the US Open. The PGA have already done it. The Masters have already done it. They're getting so close now, aren't they? They're cuddling. They're not quite kissing, these two, but they're cuddling. I mean, this is taking... How long has these negotiations taken to get golf back to being one entity in one body? 2 years it's been, right? Something like that?
It's nearly 2 years ago that they said that they were forming a partnership, right?
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
Well, the strange thing is, this was always going to happen, even before
as soon as the split happened, this was going to happen.
Either two things are going to happen. One, the Saudis are just going to keep handing out paper bags, even if you don't ask for it. They'll turn up to your house at 6 o'clock at night when you're sitting down for dinner with your family. Like, we just, here's a couple of $1 million.
Uber, delivery.
Or they would have gone, we want all the best players in the world at the majors and all these tournaments. We want to be, on our best behaviour and having good relationships and all this stuff and whatever. But this was always going to happen. The fact that it's taken this long for all of the majors to do this, more or less.
Look, for golf fans, it's great because all you want to do is watch the majors. That's all I'm interested in as far as golf is concerned. The majors, and I want to see the best players playing.
Yeah. So, yeah. I got nothing to add. You said it all there. So, this isn't much of a debate. You're saying things that I'm just kind of agreeing to. I have nothing to add. Throw something at me that we're going to disagree on.
Sam Kerr's going to get off. Sam Kerr's going to get found not guilty. I'm going to ask Matt Gunn about this shortly, but I think she's going to get found not guilty.
Why?
Just because she is a sporting superstar, and I go back to trials like the Leeds guy, the Leeds guys that racially attacked the player, the young Pakistani boys in Leeds. I go back to Stephen Gerrard, who elbowed a guy in the face and got off. I go back to who's the English cricket captain?
Ben Stokes
got off. This is what happens in England. Sporting superstars get off these charges, right? And a jury's got to decide. And they get overwhelmed and they get, goo-goo gaga about it. She's guilty as. She's guilty as charged. Guilty of, the drunkenness in the car and the spewing and the smashing the window and all of that kind of stuff. Is she guilty of racial abuse? Well, that's going to be the fascination.
Well, we had this discussion not so long ago on this podcast that what is the definition of racial abuse and does calling someone a white so-and-so fall into that?
I mean, it's very...
By the letter of the law, if that's the right term to use, it is because you're using someone's race or the colour of their skin to criticise them, right?
To insult them.
Yeah, so... But
having said that, it's on the minor end of it, I do believe. Yeah, I mean, calling a police person stupid and white, I mean, they get
there's a difference between worse than that, racially abusing someone who's white versus someone who's black.
Always.
There's a lot of reasons why. I don't think she'll get off because I don't think the jury will ignore the facts of the situation. I actually also think, and they always tell you, because I've been in a jury before, they tell you, don't let prior convictions or prior issues or prior this or that cloud your judgment when it comes to this. But when they're brought up, they always do. Now, I'm not saying there's prior things, but when her behaviour that night outside of the racial abuse gets brought up, that's always going to influence how you then decide their fate. So in that sense, she won't get off.
I still think that this would have been so easy for her if she'd just put her hand up.
Well,
and look, we all do dickhead things. We all do stupid things, and we all apologise for them, and genuinely so afterwards. I'm guilty as everyone else is of that. But why didn't whoever's advising her just say, Sam, you've lost this one? That would have been the easiest thing, wouldn't it? And then it wouldn't have gone to court. She would have paid the
what does it tell you about her as a person?
It tells you about everything about her.
It tells you a lot about her.
Finally, it was today in 1990, people. 45-1 is the ESPN 30 for 30 doco. Have you ever watched it? The story of Buster Douglas knocking out Mike Tyson in Tokyo.
No, I haven't seen it.
It is one of the best 30 for 30 docos. 45-1 because those were the odds. This was considered the biggest upset ever in boxing. Tyson 37-0, 33 by KO. Buster Douglas was a journeyman. There was no way he was going to win that fight. And today,
I wasn't alive. How did he win that fight?
Knocked him down. I think it was the 8th round, if not the 8th round, 9th round. Might have been the 9th. I think it's the 8th.
What, did he tire him out? Was it a case of Tyson just tried to
Tyson at that
swing
stage, his life was kind of spiralling out of control. He was, I think, married to Robin Givens. He had a lot of domestic abuse thing was happening. The police were called all the time. He drove a car into a tree. He didn't train properly for the fight. He thought it was a gimme fight. He put him down early in the fight, and there was some kind of the count. The ref didn't start the count until too late, and if he had actually started it when he hit the floor, it would have been 10. He would have been out cold, and it would have been gone. And Buster Douglas revived himself, came back into the fight, and Tyson, punched himself out. It was a seismic shock, one of the biggest sporting shocks ever.
And this is one of the, I think James Smitty Smith, who we've had on quite a bit, brings this up, that one of the black marks on Tyson's career, there's many, but at least his boxing career, is that when it came to these big fights, he often shrunk against the opponents that are good. Well, I mean, just Buster Douglas was a journeyman, but good opponents who he should beat, but they might be tougher battles than, say, other guys. Well, he just didn't quite
What people forget about Mike Tyson as well is that his flame burned so bright, but for such a short period of time. Like probably his biggest ever best fight was against Michael Spinks in 1988. This is in 1990. It's only 2 years later. From this, of course, he went to prison for his rape charges. He came back and he was never really the same fighter. And then Evander Holyfield, the ear biting and all of that, and then he turned into a circus freak and so forth. I mean, people love him now, but this, no one could believe this. That's why the odds were 45-1.
So there's never been a bigger upset than that? Not when Cassius Clay put down Sonny Liston? Holyfield against Tyson? That was a pretty big upset,
at least on a par with that first Clay Liston. Absolutely on a par with that. If not even more of an upset. This.
What about Foreman Ali? I've got a real surface level knowledge of boxing here.
Foreman Ali was huge as well. But Ali was still Ali at that stage. I mean, he wasn't the 1960s version of him. But Foreman was scary. Watch the doco, 45-1. Absolutely brilliant. Every Tuesday on the program, LBP, Let's Be Positive, with a great mate from Twizel, Matt Gunn. Twizel's Matt Gunn joins us, and it's a cock-a-doodle-doo, and congratulations, mate, to a man that last week took over the TikTok. Is it TikTok or is it the TikTok? You are an influencer. You are viral. You vibe connected. 107,000 plus posts on you talking about Sam Kerr behaving like a twat in the police station. That case is going to get decided overnight. I don't know what to say because I mean, you're an influencer.
I'm an influencer, Martin. I can't believe it. I'm lucky to influence myself, but apparently something that was said during the chat about Sam Kerr last week struck a chord. And it has taken me to the top of the Riz pile. I'm covered in Riz. I'm dripping with Riz. Riz is oozing out of every pore. Can't get enough Riz.
But you've got a daughter. You've got a daughter.
Explanation.
You've got a daughter, Mackenzie. I mean, is she impressed by this? She's a teenager.
Look. The first 40 or 50,000 views, not impressed. But when we hit that Riz level of 100, the whole family shut down. We did a version of Celebration from Kool and the Gang. You remember
Fantastic.
that?
Yeah, totally.
Riz me up, baby. Riz me up. Now, I just want to confirm that's Riz with an R.
Yeah.
I'm dripping with Riz.
Yeah, just make that,
with an R,
made that clear.
Which means, for those out there uninitiated, like me, it's charisma. I'm dripping with charisma.
Wow.
Apparently,
wow.
Plenty of people wanted to look at this head, and I'm a little bit shocked, just like you. But I tell you what, you can't touch me this week, Marty. You cannot touch me.
MC Hammer, mate. Let's do Super Bowl to start with. An absolute wipeout result, wasn't it? I mean, it was all over by half-time. Taylor Swift got booed by the Philadelphia fans. She's in good company. Don't forget that they threw snowballs at Santa last Christmas, okay, because that's who they are. I thought she reacted really well on the big screen. I mean, she doesn't, want people to boo her, but also, I mean, does she deserve to be booed? What I'm looking for now is the new album that's going to come out, which is all obviously going to be about Travis Kelce, the boyfriend, the devastation of the loss, and the emotional cost, because that's what she does, doesn't she?
There's an album in it, They Booed Me on the Big Stage. Is one of the songs that's going to be written about this. She sort of laughed it off and smiled. What are they booing about? I suppose the thing is that what I'm amazed about is that she's $1 billion performer. The last concert tour she did globally, she turned over $1 billion.
I know. I can take a few boos. I can take a few from that side too, okay? Yeah.
Just one here, one there. That's Riz. Right?
Yeah, that is.
But over the last couple of seasons, the headlines have been about Taylor and not the game, not the players, her association and what that makes the rest of the game look like. And I just think the true fans are a bit sick and tired of it. They thought, let's give her a boo. Let's remind her that you can make $1 billion on your tour and run around in your Swarovski's crystal bodysuit and all the other gorgeous outfits. But you're just here to watch like the rest of us.
That's it.
What are we clapping you for? We'll give you a boo instead.
That's it. And look, and I hope shit, it didn't mean anything more than that to them or to her. Super Rugby kicks off on Friday, mate. Justin Marshall on the show yesterday. He's talking up his Crusaders. As much as he says it's absolutely vital that they do perform, I'm really worried about a lot of these teams. Canes, your Highlanders, Chiefs have all got injuries. But from an Aussie perspective, seeing as that your hometown, your birthplace, how are those Australian teams going to go this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like they have the last few years. When I start to consider whether or not we're in with a chance, I go to the experts in handing out money about how good the chances are. So I have a look at the TABs, and both TAB in Australia and here in New Zealand pretty much say the same thing. One, the Blues should be the team to beat.
Yes.
Two, Waikato probably should be very close to being in the final with them.
Mm-hmm.
Then we start to, get a little bit hopeful. We get a little bit hopeful. Hurricanes are paying $6.50. I mean, they're not great odds. Like if you
with all of those injuries,
to put
it's generous.
With all the injuries, you got the Blues at 275. The best placed Aussie team's the Brumbies. Now, I'd love to be able to talk them up. You said talk up the Australian Super Rugby teams for me, but unless we get a Warriors from 23 or a Bulldogs from 2024 performance from any of our sides, we're nowhere even near getting into the grand final. We're not there. And I'm not going to talk it up.
All right,
and yesterday I read news that Joe Schmidt's leaving Australia's coaching role.
That's it. Yeah.
And now we're going to have our 5th or 6th coach in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah,
I mean, we can't get better if we don't have someone to hang around. Hasn't he done an all right job? He's got another year and then he's out.
You tell me. I mean, as a Wallaby fan, I mean, of course he's done a good job. I mean, for a start, people are feeling better about it. And I think that intangible, you got to put it in the tick column, don't you? But look, New South Wales have bolstered their squad.
It's a win that he's done that.
Yeah,
it's a loss that he's moving on so quickly.
Queensland Reds boosted their squad as well. Look, this competition every year, the thing about it is to think that any team outside of the big 4 teams in New Zealand won't win it just seems improbable, doesn't it, at best?
Yeah.
And, I suppose for the neutral fan, you think it would be great to get an Aussie team in the final. But for us here in New Zealand, if we don't dominate the semi-finals and have at least 3 teams in it, well, then the implications down the track for the All Blacks are looking bleak as well. So it's really important that New Zealand continues to dominate this, only from that perspective, if nothing else.
If we can get the Brumbies... or, look, heaven forbid, maybe even the Reds, to perform above and beyond, that would be a great result for Australia. I don't think you can rely on what you would expect week to week from these teams at the moment, based on certainly the last 2 years, that any of them will make it. But if somebody can perform above and beyond, if there's a level of performance and some combinations that kick off that we didn't expect, maybe.
Okay.
Pretty big maybe, though, isn't it? It's a bit depressing. After I've been loaded up with Riz, now I've got to look at the Super Rugby kicks off this weekend, and I'm hoping, look, goodness gracious, this weekend, I'm hoping for a Highlanders victory, but I'm not thinking that's going to come.
It's going to be.
No.
All right, so Will Jordan's come out, and he's one of the first players to say, and just makes so much sense, let the New Zealand players play in the Australian teams. I just think New Zealand rugby are just dragging the chain on this, mate. It's not going to cause mass defections for a start, but also maybe a couple of fringe players. But if you had an All Black who just thinks, look, rather than go overseas and not play for the All Blacks, I'd rather just play for an Aussie team and a change of scenery. You're playing against the New Zealand sides. It's as competitive as you possibly get. Razor can see you every second week playing again, or fly over and see you in person. And to me, it just makes no sense. In fact, it's nonsense that this decision isn't just the easiest one they've got. Rubber stamp it. Just say yes. You don't have to have a committee meeting. You don't even have to decide. It's just yes, isn't it?
I can't see a downside in the play. I can't see any negatives. I mean, the only comparison that we can make, there's 2 or 3 comparisons we can make. And they're about franchise teams here in New Zealand that play in Australian competitions. We've been watching it for years. You can't tell me that rugby league in New Zealand is not better for the mix of players playing here and there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know the situation's slightly different given there's one NRL team here. But the amount of New Zealand players that have gone on to play in the NRL, come back and play for the Kiwis, has only improved the quality of the game and the quality of the competitions we see when they do play. Look, you can't explain to me how it would be a negative. I don't understand it. Yeah. I think it would be a positive for the competition it would give people on both sides of the Tasman more reason to watch more games.
I agree.
Players from both sides
Totally
of the
agree.
Tasman
Totally
are involved
agree.
in those games,
Look,
and not just against each other.
Yeah.
You know, and who wouldn't want to see a couple of young blokes competing to be an All Black, being given an opportunity in an Australian team where they might make a massive difference, and it may improve their game.
Look, I'm
I
actually
don't know what the
thinking,
negatives would be apart from being stubborn about the rules that they've put in their own head.
I'm thinking. Look, you've got the Blues, you've got Harry Plummer, you've got Stephen Petafeta, you've got Bowden Barrett. One of those guys, running the colour for the Reds or something like that would be brilliant to watch. Two quick topics to finish with then.
Yeah.
The Warriors, can we read anything into that pre-season match, mate? When me and Lachlan started talking about this yesterday, the conversation lasted less than 60 seconds because as soon as you start dissecting, you think, what am I doing? Why am I dissecting something that you... No, I don't think you can. I mean, we got a bit of a look at Luke Metcalf, and it was very similar with the Panthers-Canberra game. It was a little bit up and down. There were some moments that were enjoyable, some good tries, but I don't think this is a form guide. Okay. I don't think you can. Let's leave it then. I just think no. Finally, then, the jury has come back with a verdict. Foreman, will you read the verdict? Matt, what happens with Sam Kerr? Decision expected overnight.
I think they'll find her guilty of the charge and there'll be a small fine involved, Martin. She may have to do some community service with some underprivileged people. It's a hard one to read. But what I did read after rizzing up and going to the top of the tickers last week is, don't laugh, Martin. No, I don't get many moments these days. One thing I did see is that the prosecution asked exactly the same questions that I asked last week. If you can't call someone a stupid black person, surely you can't call them a stupid white person. I don't see any way around it. That's the charge, regardless of whether or not they thought they were in trouble with the cab driver, which I don't believe, given he drove them to the police station rather than driving them out of the bush and doing what they say they thought he'd do. I think she'll get found guilty of being a dickhead.
The man who's just the fizz with the riz. Is that even a thing?
What do I say?
DSPN.
That's our podcast and show for today. Again, if you're liking what you're listening and what you're seeing, then a small favour, if you will. Can you please hit like, share, subscribe, follow, tell a friend about it. We are a fledgling podcast and show, the DSPN, and we need you. And if you are participating, well, just click that subscribe button. That would help enormously. Thank you so much if you already have. Again, tell a friend if you like. We're doing this every single day, putting out a show every afternoon. The DSPN.
This is the DSPN.